Everyone. We are on the Marketing Companion, and my dear friend Jay Acunzo is with me today. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm better now. That's the only
Better,
way to respond to that question when a podcaster asks you that. Well, I'm better
better now.
now.
Should I ask the next question?
Yeah, sure. Let's see what I got for that one.
Why are you better now?
Because
What
I'm with
happened?
you.
What happened yesterday?
Nothing. I had a great day.
Okay,
It wasn't a day
I do
spent.
have a question for you.
Yeah.
This this is the funniest thing. I had this song going through my head today, and I thought of you, and here's why. It was a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day today. And I thought of this song from an old musical. Good morning, good morning. You slept the whole night through. Now, the reason why this brings a smile to my face is I used to sing that song to wake up my children, and they hated it. They hated it. They would scream at me, Dad, stop singing that song, which would, of course, make me sing the song again. So I just wondered, Jay, as the
Yeah.
father of young children, do you torment your children or is it all like on the up and up?
My son is 3.5, and he's got this adorable way of when he's saying something, over and over again, and I chime in, he goes, "No," or he goes, "You don't say that." So I try, he just gives me little breadcrumbs to follow where he's like adorably and playfully shooting something down. My job as a father is then to say it so much that it switches from him being like, "No," to being like,
Okay,
"No, no,
good,
daddy, no."
good. I think that tormenting children in a way is part of their growth process. It worked for my kids. They ended up fine. But anyway, so today we're going to talk about career relevance and how do we keep learning in this really tsunami. This might be an adjective, tsunamic. I just made it up. It's a tsunamic world that we live in where we're just overwhelmed by so much information and change. And so Jay and I are going to exchange some ideas today. And before we get started, I do want to remind everyone that our show is brought to you by Brevo. Hooray for Brevo. They've sponsored us for a couple years now. They're so great and they're so easy to use. It's just amazing. They have thousands and thousands of big, like Fortune 100 companies, and you can access this CRM technology, this marketing technology for a very low price. And it's just so good. Go to brevo.com/marketing companion and you could try it for free. And if you do sign up, use the promo code companion to get 3 months for free. Huzzah. So I was in a conversation the other day with a friend, and I was talking, Jay, about the struggle really to keep up and stay relevant. Now, you and I are in sort of adjacent fields. We overlap a lot in what we do and where our passions are, but we're both creating content. We're both really engaged to create thought leadership in our fields. And I was talking to my friend about this struggle to keep up, and she turned to me and she said, "Well, is there a hybrid? Like, can you like sort of keep up?" And I thought for a moment, and I said, "No." It's like you kind of have to be all in, right? I mean, if you're a generalist in our fields, like you and I sort of are,
Hmm.
you kind of have to know enough to be conversational, to guide people and be part of the process. So let's get more granular here and talk about, what do we do? Why don't you lead off and each of us are going to share three different strategies today. So let's start with you.
Yeah, I was trying to like scope out what has been happening to me lately. And I want
Mm,
to take this question through a very specific lens, which is not how do you keep up with trends. I want to set that aside for a moment,
mm,
but I want to talk about how to keep up and stay sharp as you get more experience. I look at the room that we're recording. We're in a Zoom room with people in your wonderful community here. I think about the people I interact with day to day who are my clients or readers or whoever. And, I speak, and maybe you consider yourself someone who speaks to someone who is well beyond beginning. and is therefore well beyond a lot of the how-tos, tips and tricks, and the basics shared on social feeds.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, those are places I think that they want you to share more 101 level stuff because they want more ad inventory and more content and more engagement. And the entry level class is always bigger than the 301 level class.
Yeah.
So as I've gotten more experienced, what I realized is the pendulum swung one way, then back the way it came. I started, and I think we all do, obsessing over tactics. It's like, how do I
Yeah.
do this job? Tell
Yeah.
me the how to's, the tips and tricks. That was really useful for
Yeah.
me to read or watch or listen to when I started in marketing or I started public speaking a few years later or starting
Mhm.
anything. You're like, okay, give me the tips and tricks. Then you realize, oh, strategy, big ideas, like the way I see and think matters even more because it colors those tinier decisions too. So the pendulum swings back towards strategy, away from tactics, and the people who share strategy are like, I love those people. Oh, it's Mark Schaefer. I love learning from Mark Schaefer. Now what I find myself in is I really desperately want to learn tactics, but from people who I've already understood somehow, either secondhand or because I know them, that they are
Mhm.
strategic thinkers. It's like I only want tactics. So a good example is
Yeah.
like I'm in a mastermind group that I organized of with
Yeah.
8 other peer level entrepreneurs and
Mhm.
communicators.
Mhm.
And there I want them to get extremely specific exactly how they do something tactical because I'll
Yeah.
grab what I need from that. I don't want to hear most people on social media share their tactics, but I would love to hear, Mark, exactly how you do something because I know you're very strategic and you think big about stuff. So to me, that's like a framework I've built, not built, it's just something I realized. And I'm trying to build mastermind groups for myself. I'm trying to have coffee meetings for myself. I'm trying to get better at basically hearing the very specific tactics that very strategic and experienced people went through because that's actually really useful, not the way most people share tactics on the internet.
Yeah. Boy, I'll build on that because
Yeah,
that
please.
kind of goes with one of mine as well. And I think it also sort of brings up another topic maybe we will address on a show in the future about like you and I, you talked about graduating from tips and tricks. That's something I had to shed. Literally, like I was a tips and tricks social media kind of guy, and I had to like shed that audience and sort of like because I was getting bored and I had to move on. And but that's a topic for another day. So yeah, I joined, believe it or not, I joined my first mastermind group about 4 years ago. I was invited to a mastermind group, and my first reaction was, I don't need no help. I don't need no mastermind. I've never really sought help. It's a fatal flaw in my life, actually. But I joined this mastermind group again with like really, really smart people who are even, I was a little intimidated because they were, way ahead of me.
Mm,
But boy, that has really been great because they're out there pushing the edges like I am. And they come back and report, oh my gosh, I'm using AI to do this thing and something I had never, ever. I mean, we meet once a month. I always learn something jaw-dropping
yeah.
in this group. So that's great. And the way I'll build on this a little is I have created a community on Discord focused on the future of marketing, and this has become my university. I mean, one thing, whether it's a mastermind or a community like Rise, I mean, one of the most profound things I've learned in a very humble way in the last couple of years is I cannot be relevant by myself. I just can't. You cannot keep up. You need the help of others.
Hmm.
And the Rise community, these are wonderful, generous, smart, forward thinking people from all around the world contributing their ideas and observations. And there is not a speech or a blog post or a podcast that I do that isn't informed somehow by this community. So
Mm,
yeah, so I'm with you on that one.
yeah. Can I give you a little like it's been stuck in my brain. You know when someone says something and it's
Are
got
you
like
going to
seven
sing a
words?
song?
Yeah, I'm gonna sing a song now. Here we go. Ready?
Okay.
Good morning. Good no.
Good morning.
Uh my friend and yours, Melanie Diesel, also in the
Oh,
marketing
yes.
community, author,
Love
speaker,
Melanie.
wonderful friend.
Yeah.
She says some people sell success and some people sell skills. And I find when someone pushes the idea of success at me, let's
Yeah.
say it doesn't matter the domain, podcasting, storytelling, public
Yeah.
speaking, entrepreneurship, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. If they're
Right.
promising success, I
Yeah.
don't believe them. If they're promising
Anything
skills,
with the headline 10x.
oh yeah, of course. Of
Run
course. Yeah.
away, run away.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you on that. But like there are some people that are like become better. And I'm like, yes, I'd like to become better. Master this. Yes, I'd like to master that. Double your income, double your revenue. I'm like, oh, you are trying to persuade or even prey on people that are sort of either beginners or beginners in this thing. And
Hmm.
so like I'm like, I don't trust that. I don't believe that. I don't want that. So that
Hmm.
Melanie told me, she's like, some people advertise success, some people advertise that they offer skills. And I think you and I are people now who are like, we've been around the block enough in marketing and we're like, I want the skill part because that's something you can actually give to other people as a teacher. You can't guarantee them success.
Yeah, and that kind of leads really well into my number two strategy, and this has to do in the realm of public speaking. So I have a little trick to try to inspire me and to keep me learning in the world of public speaking, and that is I have a tradition that at every winter break I'll spend at least a day and I will binge TED Talks. So this is cool because there's no real theme in terms of TED Talks other than it's, a big idea under 18 minutes. But the diversity that you see, the diversity in presentation, the diversity in like types of humor, in storytelling, in like using a prop or even body language, uh, it's very inspiring. And so I'll just keep a list of notes and I'll just kind of look what are the top 20 TED Talks of the previous year. And I'll spend a day just watching these things and picking up notes and just finding little nuanced things that I can put into my talks in the next year. What's your
Ooh,
second one?
I like that one. We're just going to keep sort of building because I think I can take a
Okay.
tangent off that to my second,
Okay.
which is, and by the way, I used to before having little children. I remember every Saturday morning I'd make myself an espresso. Still even remember the mug I would go to. And it had this little red rim at the top of it, this like shallow mug. And I'd sit at the end of my table in an apartment I was renting with my now wife, and I would watch a TED Talk and then write. That was my Saturday morning routine. Um, very different now with a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. Anyways, um, the second thing is I get into these grooves of following a person or a type of media or content around the world. So, like, I'll give you a couple of examples. Um, there was a period where this is years ago at this point where I fell in love with like the comedy specials of Mike Birbiglia, very story driven comedian. I love stories that dance on the edge of being too sentimental without going over it. And he's really good at that. And so I would like, binge his specials, but then I would go follow him. I would like find interviews with him and I would find, and I've done this with speakers, I've done this with comedians, authors, where I'm like going to follow this person around the internet. And I find I learn two things. I go really deep with their thinking, obviously, because they're teaching similar things everywhere they go. But then as a public voice myself, I'm picking up on like how they show up. And it's like, oh, that's so interesting. He took a joke from that special and he told it on late night, but a different way and modulated his voice. And I like that. I like learning about the performative craft too. And or okay, he's doing this kind of like same, the author who does the circuit on the podcast tour, or like he does that and it's not just Berbiglia, it's not just comedians, it's all kinds of people. So I'll follow someone
Mm,
around to
mm,
get an appreciation for and almost like just absorb, just learn through osmosis
mm,
for like the way they show up
mhm.
and also what they have on offer. But I've also done this with types of media. Like there was a moment where, like I go through seasons where I was really interested in actors' roundtables,
Oh yeah.
like on YouTube, really interesting conversations, 6 or 7
Mhm,
actors in
mhm,
just a roundtable setting, lightly moderated, talking about the craft. Or, I mentioned comedians a couple times. I'll go and learn from comedians. So
mhm,
it's kind of like I'm importing from tangential or very outside the echo chamber thinkers and types of knowledge, and then importing that back to my world. And so, like, let's say that I learn through seasons where I like focus on that, almost obsess over that. And then it kind of dwindles for me and I move on to something else.
And that's so easy to do these days with YouTube.
Yes.
You just see one and then you look on the right-hand column and it says, "Oh, watch this." And I usually do. And boom, the day is gone.
Well, you know what's
But
cool about
I
this? If
yeah,
you're a content creator, you're also coming up with tons of ideas for your own work. Like,
yeah.
yes, you're learning overtly and learning through osmosis too, but then you're also like, oh, because I'm thinking about these topics all day. What he said over here, what she said over there is sparking this idea for me to write this back in my world. So it's
Mhm.
like, it's very productive across like those three dimensions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, YouTube is just amazing how you just start going down a rabbit hole, and the rabbit hole just keeps on going and going and going. And I hadn't thought about that as a strategy for me, but it kind of is because you get interested in one person or one theme, and then YouTube just takes you down that theme. So yeah, I'll add that to my list of things that keep me current. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's good. One thing that's unusual about my style, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about this, is
Sure.
people might think this is unusual, but I really don't read books. Um, for a couple reasons. And I love to read, by the way. It's not that I don't read books or I don't like. I mean, I used to be a voracious reader, but those were the days before I started the blog. And today the only books I read is if they are, and this might sound sad in a way, is if they're relevant to a book I'm writing. So if I have to do research for a book I'm writing, I will hunt out those relevant books.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really disappointed in most business books these days. Usually it's a blog post filled by 240 pages of examples.
One of my
And
one of my most viral posts ever, because I don't hunt virality, but like every so often I'll just like, fart out a thought.
luck into
And
one.
that's the one that goes viral. It was most business books are just 20 blog posts in a trench coat.
Yeah,
People loved that one.
yeah, yeah. That's good. And I mean, it's been easy. It's easier than ever to write business books today because you got AI and self-publishing, and you want to check that box. But I mean, it's a lot different, for me. And I know, I love the books that you've written, and you might be working on another one.
Yeah, yeah. I can neither
Maybe.
confirm nor deny. I haven't actually
Okay.
figured out how to resource it yet, but yes, there's it's I'm not too far from
Yeah.
having my methodology dialed in enough that I want to cement it into a book.
Yeah. And so, I mean, part of it is, just a general disappointment in books. The other is really, I'm a creator, and I wrote a blog post many, many years ago that said blogging makes you dumb, because I mean, I blog every week, and I have a podcast, and I write books, and I have to work on speeches and presentations and workshops, and I don't have time to read books. So,
Blogging makes you dumb?
blogging makes you dumb because as you're all the time I'm creating, other people are reading books and learning.
Okay, sure. Okay, I take serious
It was
umbrage with
tongue in cheek.
this.
It
Oh my
was a
gosh.
bit tongue in cheekish.
That's fair. You're
Yeah,
writing. This is the problem with a lot of marketing is like let's hollow this out. Let's instead of calling it writing, let's call it blogging. Instead of calling this art or media, let's call it
yeah,
content. Like yeah, I guess blogging in the way that like I don't know, you copying HubSpot's blog. Yeah, that makes you dumb. You become tips and tricks are us and like
yeah,
the
yeah,
byline doesn't matter. Blogging cuz you're like asking questions you can't just Google an answer for and then going
yeah.
and investigating and forcing yourself to write because
Mhm.
writing is thinking. Like you're going to be way better if you write once a day about
Oh,
things you care that I take such umbrage with that idea. I don't know who
yeah,
said that, but you know what? You know what, Mark? They're dumb. Okay? How about that?
they're dumb.
I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
Well, I mean, blogging certainly clarifies my thinking, but I mean, it was sort of a provocative blog post headline because it's just like, oh my gosh, people are just talking about all these books that they love, and I mean, I just don't have time to do it. What do I consume? And really, there's a couple podcasts that I like. There's a couple newsletters that I like. Um, and I think, and South by Southwest is a place that where I learn, and it's expensive to go there. It's difficult to really go there, but that's a place I go to learn. One podcast I don't miss is the Artificial Intelligence podcast hosted by Mike Kaput and Paul Raitzer. It's about 1 hour every week, and it just kind of gets you in that world. And I'll just name one newsletter that I read every word of it, and that would be Exponential View by Azim Azar. And
Mm.
Azim is a journalist and a technologist and a VC, and he just has well, he's really built up this like list of contacts where he's become because he's a thought leader. He's built up this group of people that he can bring in to help him sort of foresee what's coming next. And it's not marketing at all. It's about the economy, it's about the environment, it's about technology. It's about even whatever is new and happening next. So that's where I love to dwell, like what's happening next, which
Yeah.
is why South by Southwest is an important resource for me.
Yeah.
So what about you? What's your third one?
Well, on the topic of consumption, what's interesting is a lot of people in business, regardless of your focus area, you're consuming. It's almost like a transaction to the brain. You wish it was the Matrix chairs, like from the movie The Matrix, to just like upload something quickly to your brain and you move on.
It's
The way you
coming. I
feel
think that's
consuming those,
coming.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the way you feel consuming those things is besides the point. Experiencing them is not the issue. Having experienced them in the past is the issue, or is the point, right? It's a transaction of information. I find that like my work works better. In other words, I drive better results in audience and revenue when the experience of what I put out is also the point. Where you don't just want to like download this to your brain. You don't want to listen on 2x speed. You don't want the checklist of takeaways so you can
Mhm.
skip the reading or watching or listening. You want both. You want the information, but you also want to be inside of what I'm offering you because the
Yeah.
way you feel is something that's changing you and you like. This we
Yeah.
see this with good speakers, we see this with good podcasts, we see this with so when we consume, if we only consume things that are transactional by nature, we will
Mhm.
produce transactional information and we will never get to the point where we're doing anything transformational. And I don't want that. That doesn't serve my business, my
Mhm.
audience, my life. So I consume a lot of stuff where the goal is not to speed it up to get through it, but the goal is to like come back to it and sit with it and make a meal of it. Like shows that I'm like, this isn't about work, but I'm learning about how they're making me feel. So when
Mhm.
I come back and share my expertise, I can also make you feel a certain way. Like
Mhm.
that's good
Mhm.
learning too. And I think we poo-poo that in business. It's like not as, we're not being very important leaders and marketers to think that way. Good. More people thinking that way means that you and I have an easier time of standing out, Mark, because we're
Mhm.
also thinking about how we're making you feel, which is an edge.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's just a little add on to the consumption topic. I do have a third one, but go ahead. I'd love your response on that.
I'm obsessed with that.
Yes.
I am. I'm obsessed with that. And I'm obsessed with the idea of creating content that just shakes somebody in some way and
Yeah.
makes them notice and makes them feel. And I even invested in a project one time that I wanted to like merge visual elements with written content on a website. What I found was if to do that, you'd basically kill all your SEO because you'd have to do this in a way where Google couldn't really see the words anymore. And it just, it was too big of a risk, I think, for me at that point. But I've just been obsessed with, and in my, in the book I just put out, Audacious, it really highlights the idea of experiential marketing, shared experiences, and I'm obsessed with this idea of like mashing up media and mashing up ideas and bringing people together in a way where they don't just absorb it, they feel it.
Mm.
And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
There.
and yeah, there's, I mean, and I think that's the future. It's the future that AI is it's just creating this pandemic of dull, and uh, it just is what it is.
Yep.
But I think our content must approach art. It must approach art. It's got to make you feel, even B2B, even whatever you can think of. We've got to push our content in this way where it's an experience, where it means something and it makes us feel something.
Yeah, amen. Man, you and I should host a podcast together. I like this. So I this idea I come back to is, and I wrote about this movie that did it for me when I was a child. The movie is a holiday film called The Snowman, and I wrote about it at the end of the year because I always look for like one seasonal thing to close my year and take a couple weeks off. And I wrote, "What if you could only whisper? What would you say if you couldn't shout, you couldn't hype, you couldn't shove, you couldn't repurpose? All you could do was whisper something very softly and calmly to the right few people. What would you say? What would the words be? How would you execute that little moment?" Because we're
Mm.
so obsessed with, you got to get in front of them 7 or 8 times for them to care. Okay, so you have lots of mediocre moments with people, and that gets enough time that they trust you. Or you say one thing one time that they can't stop thinking about. Imagine that. So this is a tangent off a tangent off a tangent. So I'll give you my third way that
Okay.
I try to learn, which I
Hmm.
suppose is me hunting for what would I say if I had to whisper? Because I think that's developed. You don't brainstorm it. You build your way there by learning how to say things the right way and what works and what doesn't. So my third thing to stay relevant, to keep up, to understand what's working, to understand my audience and myself, very simply is creative throughput. I'm a very generative creator. I like to create. If I don't get it out of me and onto the page or into the world, it feels like I'm suffocating. And in doing that, I'm constantly getting more data than, and this is funny because I don't normally communicate using a term like that, but that's what it is. I have more access to more data than somebody who competes with me selling whatever message design or public speaking coaching like I do, right?
Mm.
Like I have so
Mm.
much throughput in getting out my ideas to sharpen how I say it. So
Mm.
I'm learning, but also seeing the reaction or no reaction, getting questions, hearing people's stories build upon my own, all of
Mm.
that. That by showing up and constantly investigating and asking deeper questions and like forcing myself to think through things and then placing it in front of people, it's back to comedy, very similar to the comedian going to the small comedy clubs, getting more stage time, or the public speaker getting more stage time to work out the best parts of this or the best bits. That's an advantage. So that's the other part of this work too, is I've always had a creative practice. I started writing on the internet in 2005. My body of work turns 20 this year. Um, let's just say my actual body also feels 20 because that sounds better than the real way I feel every day. But I create, I make, and then I pay attention to how I feel and how others respond. And that to me is a form of keeping up or getting ahead.
Yeah, that's the corollary to blogging makes you dumb, Yeah, it's the yeah. And I often say that, when I write a book, it's like getting a master's degree. I mean, it really is. You research and you study and you write for 2 years, and
Yes.
and then I have a new competency. When I wrote about, personal branding or brand communities at the beginning, I wasn't an expert, but by the end I was. And I could talk about it, speak about it, consult about it, help nurture. Yeah. So, and then, blogging is sort of like the mini short courses, right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Good.
Yeah. And look, the books thing, I totally relate to that. But I go back to a Quentin Tarantino quote while we're on the subject of like making to learn, making to stay relevant, not consuming. So create over consume. Quentin Tarantino, the filmmaker, had this awesome quote. Again, if you had to whisper something, he might whisper this because it's stuck in my brain, which is, I didn't go to film school, I went to films. So he is consuming there, right? But what he's consuming is not instruction on how to make films. It is the final product that then he's making sense of it and synthesizing it. And it only matters, it only becomes sticky education when he goes and makes a film based on what he consumes, right? Like modeling his heroes. So that is more creator leaning, create leaning, even though it is a moment of consumption, than our usual business or marketing consumption, which is like we conflate like producing the work with learning about the work, which are totally different things and different skill sets, and one should lead to the other. But I think increasingly we think that because we keep up with what others are saying that we're somehow improving, and I just don't see it that way. So I'm of the Tarantino leaning way of
Mm,
educating myself is I consume the work of people I admire, then try to replicate it in my own way. I didn't go to film school, I went to films.
awesome. Awesome. Great way to wrap up this episode, my friend. Thank you so much for the wonderful conversation. I learned a lot, and I know our audience did too. So, thanks everyone for joining us. We never take you for granted. We will see you next time on the Marketing Companion.